I started working with food when I was still a student at the Design Academy in the Netherlands, in Eindhoven. And at that time I didn't really realize the importance of the subject, but I just started to work with food because it was such a kind of direct material that you can make something with instantly, and then also having people eating your design, which I find super fascinating. So I started doing that about 17 years ago. But then it really took me quite some years to develop it and to start to understand the actual importance of food as a subject. Very first thing I did with food was a white funeral dinner. So the ingredients were completely white, as white is the color of death in many cultures. I did lots of smaller projects, and one of the projects that I started with was plant bones, which is a future scenario for meat. So these plant bones are a kind of projection of what we could find maybe in the future, which is a bone-like structure that is growing like a plant, and it has the shape of a plant leaf, but then there is a meat structure growing inside. And this could either be actual meat, like an animal meat, or this could also be a plant-based meat, but like similarities to meat. When I work on a project, I try to look at it in the most holistic way. So I try to think about the people that actually eat the food. I try to look at where it comes from. But I think the food system is so big that you can never actually include all the parts of the whole food system in one design. But I do try to, with all the designs that I make, try to cover the whole scope of the whole food system. So we're in an urban area that's very urbanized. So it's quite hard, I think, for chefs here to really relate to where your food comes from. So I thought it was an interesting inspiration for me to think about how can you comment on that link. And I think the lunch of the Chefify event was called the Grazing Cityscape. Grazing is this very animalistic and primal approach to eating that we hardly ever do. But in a way, it's also kind of something that children do as well, sometimes for fun. But it's something that is very far away from our civilized world. You put the food inside, so you don't touch it with your lips, whereas your lips contain a very high density of nerve ends. So you have a very sensitive tool here that you don't actually use. So I was thinking about the distance that chefs have and the distance that we have as human beings while eating, and that's very much linked to an urbanized area. So all the glasses on the table, they look like a kind of skyline, like a cityscape. So this is a kind of visual reference to where we are. But when you start to have to eat with your mouth instead of with tools or fingers, or to really take away this distance, then I think there's this interesting merge of two ends, the very rural and the very urban area. And that's what happens when you start to actually get in touch with the food directly on your mouth. And of course, it's also just a fun and playful thing to do, which I think it's important to kind of always refer to the child, the inner child that you are always, and that you will be, and that everybody is. So yeah, that's what the Grazing Cityscape is about. I think these kind of events are really important because I do see that many chefs, they tend to stay inside their kitchens and they mostly look at other chefs. But then I think the most interesting collaborations are actually cross-disciplinary. So yeah, I think these kind of events, they show that there's more outside of only the kitchen.